Like after epic fury, epic rescue, now epic peace deal. Just wait.
The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms. Questions?
Sir, Nick Robertson from CNN. Precisely what have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we've negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will. Jen.
Was there a framework on anything? And also, did the Iranian frozen assets come up, and did you reach any conclusions on those frozen assets?
We talked about all those issues, Jen, and we talked about a number of issues beyond that. And so certainly those things came up. But again, we just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms. I think that we were quite flexible, we were quite accommodating. The President told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that, and unfortunately we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the President throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the President consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team because we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, where does this
Are
leave
we
the
going
Strait of
back to
Hormuz?
work? Did you go back to Prime Minister Netanyahu at all today? What about the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, that was the US Vice President J.D. Vance making an important statement there. Well, he's gone on to say that there has not been any breakthrough in the talks with Iran. That's a very important statement coming in from the US right there. Remember that this comes after more than 21 hours rather of negotiations with Iran in Islamabad, Pakistan, which Pakistan was mediating. We're learning that there has not been any breakthrough and that the US side is expected to return back to the United States today after, in fact, having that discussion with Iran in Islamabad.
Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel Peace Prize for the epic peace deal? Pakistan praises its role in Iran. Conflict seeks Nobel Peace Prize. Nobel Peace Prize for Shehbaz Sharif, Field Marshal Asim Munir, amid U.S.-Iran ceasefire. Pakistan seeks credit for the U.S.-Iran ceasefire, but reports point to China as the key force behind persuading Tehran to agree to the truce. Wow.
Pakistan wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Why? For brokering a ceasefire between Iran and the United States. And they're not being subtle about it. They want it for Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir. They may want the Nobel, but reports suggest it wasn't all they're doing. The New York Times says it wasn't Shehbaz Sharif who drafted the ceasefire message. It was, in fact, the White House. And then Trump revealed more details. He said China pressed Iran to accept the truce. And let's for a moment assume they did broker this. They did broker the ceasefire. But a Nobel Peace Prize? This is a country that has been behind multiple terror attacks. Pakistan's own Defense Minister, Khwaja Asif, admitted it on camera. Now let's be honest. The Nobel Peace Prize has gone to some controversial figures over the years. But even by those standards, this would be a first.
You are watching Sanglikar's Weekly.
US-Iran war as it unfolded.
US-Israel war against Iran. Why did US and Israel attack Iran? Conflict was sparked across the Middle East after the US and Israel launched wide-ranging strikes on Iran, killing the country's supreme leader on February 28th. Iran responded by launching attacks on Israel and U.S. allied states in the Gulf. The fighting escalated quickly, spreading to Lebanon, with casualties and damage mounting on all sides. The U.S. and Iran have since agreed to a conditional 2-week ceasefire starting on April 7th. The U.S. and Israel targeted key sites linked to Iran's nuclear program, which Iran insists is entirely peaceful. U.S. and Israel also attacked Karg Island, home to a major oil terminal that is considered Iran's economic lifeline, and South Pars, part of the world's largest natural gas field. An Iranian warship was sunk by a U.S. submarine in the Indian Ocean near Sri Lanka on 4th of March. At least 87 people were killed. The U.S.-based group Human Rights Activists in Iran, HRANA, reported on the 2nd of April that 3,530 people had been killed in Iran since the war began, including 1,606 civilians, of whom at least 244 were children. Retaliation by Iran and its allies was devastating. Iran and pro-Iran groups conducted strikes on many neighboring countries, which has U.S. military bases. The war spread. Iran attacked a British military base in Cyprus with a drone, fired 2 ballistic missiles at the UK military base on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. Instability in the Middle East impacted the global economy. Iran has been accused of attacking ships in the Gulf, forcing the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a key artery accounting for about 20% of global oil supply. Trump postponed his threats to strike Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure unless Iran opens the strait after U.S. fighter planes were shot down and airmen captured. Finally, Trump fixed April 8th as the final day and said, "A whole civilization will die tonight if Iran does not make a deal." Hours before Trump's deadline approached on April 7th, the U.S. and Iran announced it would implement a 2-week ceasefire after an intervention by Pakistan, detailing plans to secure an end to the conflict. Let the ceasefire succeed. Racing thoughts in the face of the war, which shook the world for more than a month.
20-year streak snaps. U.S. suffers combat aircraft losses after 2 decades.
First aerial losses since 2003. U.S. officials confirmed that Iran shot down an F-15E Strike Eagle. Iranian state media also reported that a U.S. A-10 attack aircraft crashed after being struck by Tehran's air defenses. The previous such instance occurred in 2003, when an A-10 Thunderbolt II was hit during the Iraq War. Why is U.S. losing aircraft in Iran? Experts say that U.S. aircraft flying at lower altitudes may have increased their vulnerability. Iranian shoulder-fired missiles are likely to have brought down the American planes. Pilots follow strict protocols after ejection, including assessing injuries and transmitting their location for rescue.
Mission Impossible. Why U.S. can't rescue its missing pilot from Iran so easily. Behind enemy lines. U.S. is searching for a missing pilot in Iran's rugged Khogalia and Boiramad region after its F-15 jet was shot down. Iran has escalated tensions by offering a bounty and urging civilians to report the enemy pilot. The incident challenges claims of weakened Iranian defenses and adds pressure on Trump amid ongoing conflict. Experts warn rescue is extremely complex, with hostile airspace, risk of enemy fire, and no guarantee of safe access. This isn't like TV, an ex-Special Force veteran of the U.S. said while underlining the unpredictability of such missions. The missing pilot faces harsh terrain, possible injuries, limited communication, and active pursuit. Survival itself is a challenge. Night operations may offer cover due to U.S. tech advantage, but navigating mountains increases danger of crashes and detection. Trump issues 48-hour ultimatum. U.S. President Trump gave Tehran 48 hours to cut a deal or face all hell, following a strike near an Iranian nuclear plant. Time is running out 48 hours before all hell will rain down on them, Trump said. This comes after Iran shot down 2 U.S. jets, including an F-15E and A-10, in a day.
Trump's leadership put to test. Meanwhile, Trump faces intense political scrutiny, as the incident challenges his long-held image of decisive leadership. Failure in handling the Iran crisis is also undermining Trump's critique of previous U.S. foreign policy. The broader conflict exposes operational strain, with high U.S. air losses weakening the perception of American dominance.
Pentagon faces intense scrutiny as casualty cover-up claims rock Washington and erode public trust in war reporting. A leaked report exposes the true cost of the Iran war, far exceeding President Trump's official admission significantly. Around 750 U.S. troops reportedly killed or wounded, raising doubts about CENTCOM incomplete battlefield accounting. Official tally remains frozen at just 15 dead, despite mounting evidence of heavier losses across active fronts. Underreported wounded cases and silenced losses keep America's true war toll hidden in deliberate shadows. Is the total human cost beyond 13,000 casualties? Dramatically beyond Washington's carefully managed disclosures. A growing controversy is unfolding over claims that the Pentagon has been underreporting U.S. casualties in the ongoing conflict with Iran. An investigation by The Intercept suggests the true scale of U.S. losses in the region is significantly higher than what has been officially acknowledged so far. The report claims nearly 750 U.S. troops have been killed or wounded in the Middle East since October 2023, including both combat and non-combat incidents. However, figures released by U.S. Central Command appear incomplete, raising concerns that Washington may be engaged in a form of casualty cover-up. For instance, a CENTCOM statement citing 303 wounded U.S. troops undercounts multiple recent attacks, including those involving Iranian missile and drone strikes on bases. CENTCOM has also not updated the official death toll of U.S. troops in this war, leaving the last confirmed figure at 15 with no clear explanation for the gap. Defense officials and independent analysts have criticized the lack of transparency, arguing it hides the full human cost of the conflict from the public and Congress. Jennifer Kavanagh said, and I quote, "CENTCOM and the White House should be providing accurate and timely information on the costs and casualties involved in this war. After all, it is American taxpayers who are funding it, and U.S. economic prosperity and economic well-being that is being undermined by it." The U.S. president has acknowledged that casualties are inevitable in any conflict, even as he continues to push for more aggressive military operations in the region. At the same time, Trump has signaled that the war could end within weeks, even though many of the stated strategic objectives have not yet been met. The conflict has seen Iranian missile and drone attacks on multiple U.S. bases across the Middle East, from Saudi Arabia to Jordan and Iraq. These attacks have exposed vulnerabilities in U.S. military infrastructure, particularly the lack of sufficient hardened shelters for troops and equipment. Critics argue the Pentagon failed to adequately prepare for such retaliation, despite years of warnings about Iran's growing long-range strike capabilities. The situation has forced some U.S. troops to relocate from exposed military bases to civilian locations such as hotels and commercial compounds. This shift has raised further concerns about the risk of civilian sites becoming de facto military targets in the event of additional Iranian strikes. Additional incidents, including injuries aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford, may not yet be reflected in the official casualty counts released by the Pentagon. Beyond uniformed troops, contractors working with U.S. forces have also reportedly been injured or killed in the course of operations. Official statistics show that almost 12,900 contractors were injured while working on U.S. base operations in 2024 alone. Analysts warn that if these contractor figures are added to the existing military casualty estimates, the total number of casualties linked to U.S. operations could exceed 13,000. In a strong message, U.S. President Donald Trump said the downing of a U.S. jet would not affect negotiations with Iran, according to NBC. Trump reportedly said the situation was war, and dismissed concerns that it would impact ongoing peace efforts. He also declined to share details about search and rescue operations for missing U.S. personnel. Earlier, Trump's national security team had briefed him on the downed U.S. fighter jet, NBC reported. The president was also receiving frequent updates on the ongoing search and rescue operation in Iran, according to the report. This comes as Iran claimed major air defense success, calling it a black day for US and Israeli forces. Iran's Revolutionary Guard reportedly said it had downed US jets, drones, and cruise missiles across multiple regions. Tehran also alleged it shot down 2 MQ-9 drones and destroyed a Hermes drone in key provinces. The US A-10 Warthog was also reportedly hit, with the pilot ejecting safely before the aircraft went down in Kuwait, NBC said. Earlier, Iran claimed it had downed an F-15E two-seater fighter jet, while one pilot was rescued by US forces. Iran also said another US jet was hit and later crashed into the Strait of Hormuz.
US hits site near Iran's Bushehr nuke plant. Iran Foreign Minister warns of radiological release risk. Iran has said that this is the fourth attack by US near Bushehr plant, and Iranian Foreign Minister Arakchi has written to UN chief, and he has said that the attacks will expose entire region. He has also warned risk of radioactive contamination. In fact, he has warned of risk of radiological release after this fourth attack near the Bushehr nuclear power plant. This is what he has written in his letter to the UN chief. So, Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Arakchi, has written a letter to UN chief Antonio Guterres condemning the US-Israeli attacks on Iran's nuclear sites and also warning that such attacks expose the entire region to a serious risk of radioactive contamination. So, this is the latest after the US attack on the Bushehr nuke site. That is the latest that's coming in. Iranian Foreign Minister has warned that there could be radiological release in the entire region. Now, what is important to note that the Bushehr is just 280 kilometers from Kuwait City. If you talk about Doha, the distance is just 400 kilometers. And if you talk about Tehran, it's just 750 kilometers. So any radiation leak hits Gulf more than Tehran. So Tehran is almost 750 kilometers, which is much far than Kuwait City and Doha, which are just 280 kilometers and 400 kilometers away respectively. So that is what the Iranian Foreign Minister has raised, the point that he has raised, that there could be a radiological release and that will be affecting the entire region and not just Iran. So US and Israel have carried out strikes on the Bushehr plant. What is important to note that this is the fourth attack on Bushehr, which is a nuke hub in Iran. And now Iranian Foreign Minister has written to the UN chief. He has warned of radiological release risk, and he has also said that if there is a radiological release, that will affect the entire region, and it just not includes Iran, because as I already told you about the proximity, the close proximity of the Bushehr region to Kuwait and Doha also, which are just 280 kilometers to 400 kilometers away. But if we talk about Tehran, Tehran is 750 kilometers away from this site. We have some big breaking news coming in at this hour. As the US President Donald Trump has posted a video of massive strikes on Tehran. That's right, the US President has posted a video of strikes in Iran. Now, Trump has even gone on to say, and I quote, that many of Iran's military leaders have been killed. That's right, he's further gone on to reiterate that many of the people of Iran's leadership have been now killed, and he's even gone on to add that those who led Iran unwisely have been terminated.
Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards. Trump rages at Iran on Easter Sunday.
Fiery rhetoric and threats. Donald Trump issued a profanity-laced warning threatening massive strikes if Iran failed to reopen the strategic Hormuz Strait immediately. Trump warned Iran to open the fucking strait, or you'll be living in hell, threatening Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day. His crazy bastards remark and Easter timing stunned observers, with outlets verifying the authenticity of the message. Trump earlier warned Iran it had 48 hours before all hell will rain, raising fears of expanded attacks. US officials argue strikes on infrastructure supporting missiles and drones are justified despite civilian impact concerns. Critics warn such action risks breaching humanitarian law and could harden Iranian resolve while escalating regional tensions.
Trump backs off Iran strikes, agrees to temporary ceasefire. U.S.-Iran 2-week ceasefire. Tehran claims historic victory. Peace is our victory. Peace is our victory.
After weeks of escalating conflict, the US, Israel and Iran have agreed to a tentative 2-week ceasefire. US President Donald Trump first called Iran's proposal workable, then quickly cast doubt on it. That sums up the mood, uncertain. The biggest flashpoint, the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil routes. Iran wants control and transit fees. The US plans to keep military oversight. Then there's the nuclear issue. Iran insists it will continue uranium enrichment. Washington says that's a red line. Israel meanwhile backs the pause but says it will keep fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. So the ceasefire isn't exactly all-encompassing. The United Nations is urging restraint. But here's the bottom line. This ceasefire may stop the shooting for now. But the core conflict's still very much alive.
Reactions.
Did a top Israeli official just publicly mock the US president and then delete it? And why is the word duck causing so much controversy right now? Just hours after a ceasefire announcement between the United States and Iran, a surprising voice entered the conversation. Zvika Fogel, chairman of Israel's National Security Committee, posted a sharp message aimed at Donald Trump. The tweet read, "Donald, you came out looking like a duck." Short, sharp, and instantly viral. But what does duck even mean here? In Israeli slang, calling someone a duck isn't harmless. It suggests weakness, hesitation, even cowardice. Think lame duck or someone backing down under pressure. And yes, it may also be a sarcastic jab at Donald Duck.
Putin's first reaction after ally Mujtaba appears to have forced Donald Trump to halt the war. Russia's first statement came after Trump announced a 2-week ceasefire with Iran. Putin aide mocked the United States and NATO bloc after Iran deals humiliating setbacks to US in war. Iran now appears to have gained both nuclear leverage and Hormuz advantage as Trump was forced to bow before Iran. Russia's foreign ministry on April 8th reacted to the newly announced Iran-US ceasefire after weeks of war. Maria Zakharova told Sputnik that Moscow had helped efforts to resolve the Middle East crisis on the basis of international law. Zakharova said Russia played a role in the peace push and framed that role as part of a law-based effort to defuse the conflict. Maria Zakharova said, and I quote, "Russia's active involvement in helping to resolve the situation was built on national interests, international law, and truly humanitarian goals." Unquote.
Conflicting reports on ceasefire agreement.
Reports indicate that Iran appears to have distributed two somewhat different versions of the 10-point draft, with subtle but potentially significant variations in wording. According to an Associated Press report, there was one key difference between the English and Farsi versions of Iran's draft, focused on how nuclear enrichment was framed. Iran's Farsi language handout explicitly mentioned acceptance of enrichment as one of the 10 points, clearly tying the issue to Iran's right to maintain uranium enrichment. By contrast, the English language version of the document handed to journalists did not include the same reference to enrichment, leading to confusion over whether this was a deliberate omission or translation choice. For the United States and Israel, ending Iran's nuclear program was a central objective of the war, even as other goals such as the Hormuz blockade also shaped the conflict. For years, Iran has maintained a firm no to any proposal that would require it to stop its nuclear program altogether, insisting it is pursuing civilian energy and research only.
A few hours after the announcement of a ceasefire, which I welcome here, and which, in as far as the information is accurate, is currently being respected on the ground. And we are indeed waiting in the coming days and weeks for it to be fully respected throughout the region. We have said it repeatedly since the beginning of this conflict. For nearly 40 days now, it is indeed through negotiation that we can provide the security guarantees necessary for stability throughout the region. Therefore, the announcement of this ceasefire is very good news. Regarding the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has announced its readiness to reopen it, which is a positive development. We have been working for several weeks to mobilize our partners in Asia, Europe, and the region. Around 15 countries are currently mobilized and participating in the planning, led by France, to enable the implementation of a strictly defensive mission in coordination with Iran, when the conditions are right, to facilitate the resumption of maritime traffic.
Wither Trump's Iran deal? So Trump stopped the 10th war, a war he started?
Open the straits, you crazy. This is a president of the United States. This is just murder before our eyes by a deranged old man and an absolutely vicious war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu. Presumption is that the reason the supreme leader, Khamenei, and so many government officials were together is that they had made progress in the negotiations. And Mossad, which is a murder machine, said, oh, they're all together, let's kill them all. And Trump said, yeah, that's a splendid idea, let's kill them all. You might think, oh, these clever people, they must be so well advised, they must know what they're doing. It's puzzling, why didn't they think of that? Because they're not smart, they don't calculate, and they don't listen, and they have no respect for anybody else. Trump says, oh, NATO, we should end NATO, and God, I hope he does.
The daddy and the child analogy has completely turned on its head there.
Well, the guy behaves like a 3-year-old. I know that the Iranians did not want a nuclear weapon, and they wanted to negotiate. I know that because they called me repeatedly.
With arguably the strongest military and the greatest intelligence, how does a country make such a colossal miscalculation?
It's also got the stupidest president in the world. And he's going to kill a lot of people tomorrow on his whim. And our Congress stands back just asking, oh, what do you think he will do? How many people will he kill? Will he follow through? Not, how do we stop this madness? Because this is madness.
You think they're waiting it out, that there's just 2 or 3 more years to go and then Donald Trump will be out?
I'll tell you, the Middle East will not last 3 years. I don't know if it'll last 3 months.
Trump's Iran war, a strategic failure on all fronts.
The cessation of hostilities against Iran marks a strategic defeat for Trump, underscoring how little his war of aggression actually achieved. First, it failed in its central aim, regime change. Instead, it has consolidated the Iranian regime's grip on power, giving new life to a government that had been under strain. Second, the Strait of Hormuz, opened before the war, is now subject to regulated passage under Iranian coordination. What Trump demanded as an unconditional reopening has instead evolved into a tacit recognition of Tehran's authority, with Iran poised to levy transit fees, much like Egypt does in the Suez Canal. Third, the war's international economic costs are vast and enduring. Damage to energy infrastructure across the Gulf and Iran will reverberate globally, making this war arguably the most economically disruptive in decades. Fourth, the war deepened America's geopolitical isolation. Trump's public frustration with NATO allies, as well as partners like Australia, Japan, and South Korea, only underscored the lack of international backing for a war that had no basis in international law. Meanwhile, Gulf Arab states have been left to absorb both physical damage and reputational fallout. Fifth, the war has eroded not just Trump's credibility, but that of the United States itself. Finally, it has fractured Trump's domestic political base at a critical moment ahead of the midterms. This was a war that weakened America, rescued Iran's theocratic regime.
You are watching Sanglikar's Weekly.
bullets are leaking. The pressure is rising. We locked on the target. And now you are high, yeah, let's see you.
Next news item, blink and it's gone.
70 nations react to UN peacekeeper killings by Israel. A coalition of more than 70 countries, along with the European Union, has strongly condemned deadly attacks on United Nations peacekeepers in Lebanon, warning that such actions may constitute a war crime. The joint statement, led by Indonesia and France at the United Nations, followed the killing of 3 Indonesian peacekeepers serving with the UN Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, and injuries to personnel from multiple nations. The countries called for immediate de-escalation, accountability for those responsible, and stronger protection measures for UN personnel amid rising violence and mass displacement in Lebanon. The statement highlights growing global concern over the deteriorating security situation and its implications for international peacekeeping operations.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, I have the honor to read the following joint statement on the safety and security of peacekeepers on behalf of Algeria, Armenia, Australia, Austria, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Belgium, Brazil, Brunei Darussalam, Cambodia, People's Republic of China, Colombia, Croatia, Cyprus, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Denmark, Egypt, El Salvador, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Ghana, Greece, Guatemala, Hungary, Indonesia, Ireland, Italy, Jordan, Latvia, Liberia, Luxembourg, Malaysia, Malta, Moldova, Mongolia, Morocco, Nepal, the Netherlands, North Macedonia, Pakistan, Panama, the Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Qatar, Republic of Korea, Romania, Russian Federation, Sierra Leone, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sri Lanka, Sweden, Tanzania, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Turkey, United Kingdom, Uruguay, Zambia, and the European Union. And the list is, as of now, we have indication that more countries will be joining this statement. We, the troop contributing countries to the UN Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL, joined by several other member states and the European Union, express deep concern over the escalation of tension in Lebanon since 2 March 2026 and its impact on the safety and security of peacekeepers. We condemn in the strongest terms the persistent attacks against UNIFIL, including the latest grave attacks which cost the lives of 3 Indonesian peacekeepers and injured several other peacekeepers from France, Ghana, Indonesia, Nepal, and Poland. We also firmly condemn the unacceptable aggressive behavior towards UNIFIL personnel and leadership recently observed. We recall that peacekeepers must never be the target of attack, and that attacks on them are prohibited while they enjoy protection under international law and relevant UN Security Council resolutions and may constitute a war crime. The safety and security of UN peacekeepers is non-negotiable, and we urge the UN and the Security Council to exert all tools available at its disposal to strengthen the protection of UN peacekeepers in an increasingly dangerous environment. We reaffirm our full support for UNIFIL and its mandate as set out in relevant Security Council resolutions and urge all parties under all circumstances to take all measures to ensure the safety and security of peacekeeping personnel and premises in accordance with international law. We call on the UN to continue investigating all attacks against peacekeepers in a prompt, transparent, and comprehensive manner, and keep the relevant troop contributing country informed on the progress consistent with Security Council resolutions 2518/2020 and 2589/2021. Those responsible for these attacks must be held accountable. We express deep concerns over the humanitarian situation in Lebanon, especially the significant civilian casualties, the extensive destruction of civilian infrastructure, and the mass displacement of more than 1 million people. We call on parties to urgently return to the cessation of hostilities arrangement of 2024 and respect the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701 of 2026. We call for a cessation of hostilities in Lebanon, de-escalation of tensions, and for all parties to return to the negotiating table. We reiterate our strong commitment to the sovereignty, independence, territorial integrity, and unity of Lebanon. We pay tribute to the dedication and service of all United Nations peacekeepers who risk their lives in the cause of international peace and security, and express our deep appreciation to all troop contributing countries. Thank you, and I thank everybody who are here.
You are watching Sanglikar's Weekly.
Like Guardian called conditional truce between USA-Iran humiliating for USA despite Trump rant. 10+2 conditions are humiliating for the superpower, said the newspaper. Like Hollywood star George Clooney said Trump is loony, has crossed all limits of decency. What decency? Retorted Trump. Like Trump team has issued a stern warning to the Catholic Church. We'll do what we want. Better be on our side.
The Pope issues stern warning to Donald Trump. The Pope has called on United States President Donald Trump to stop the spiral of violence in the Middle East before it becomes an irreparable abyss. Pope Leo XIV sent the strong message to Trump while speaking in the Vatican. Hours before he spoke, U.S. officials confirmed the killing of Iran's 86-year-old supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. According to media reports shortly before he spoke, Israeli forces were continuing to bomb targets inside Iran. Did Trump's officials threaten Catholic Church? Vatican cancels White House's invitation to host Pope Leo XIV. Like NATO chief, Mark Rutte got an earful of abuses from Trump on his visit to White House.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump, has in fact put out a post on Truth Social, and he has once again has lashed out at the NATO partners. None of these people, including our own, very disappointing. NATO understood anything unless they have pressure placed upon them.
And, Colonel McGregor said, taking help of Pakistan is like asking a pickpocket to safeguard your wallet.
You know, frankly, for the Pakistanis to offer help is sort of like a man who is in a burning building offering you a spare room in the building. Pakistan has enormous problems. I mean, financially, they're insolvent and so forth, which is why I have argued strongly for a long time now. I started really on the Tucker Carlson program when he interviewed me, that New Delhi would be the better setting. And even in the United States, there's not an understanding of why, and I just want to cover this ground one more time. Prime Minister Modi, and I don't care if everybody loves him or hates him in India, I have no idea, but Prime Minister Modi is someone who enjoys a great deal of respect and confidence across the globe. This is someone who is at ease with Putin in Moscow. He is comfortable talking to the leadership in Tehran. He recently visited Israel, and the Israelis are comfortable with him. We are comfortable with India.
Like, in an interesting development, US First Lady Melania Trump held a presser to declare that she was never in relationship with pedophile sex offender Jeff Epstein. But why this clarification? No smoke.
US First Lady Melania Trump has dismissed claims linking her to disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, calling the allegations false and defamatory. She made a rare public statement right outside the White House. She said that the lies linking her with disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end. Melania Trump said that this and made it clear that she never had a relationship with Epstein or any of his associates, including his girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell. She added that any interaction was limited to brief encounters in casual and social settings. Melania Trump also pushed back against a report from author Michael Wolff that the notorious pedophile introduced her to Donald Trump. She made it clear that Epstein did not introduce me to my husband, I met him by chance.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common. I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note.
Like, Israel has refused to join peace talks in Pakistan. It's a terrorist state, said Israel. No doubt true.
पाकिस्तान में एक हाई लेवल मीटिंग हो रही है जहां यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स और ईरान के बीच युद्ध रोकने की बातचीत चल रही है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ा सवाल, आखिर इजराइल इस मीटिंग में क्यों नहीं है? हाल ही में अमेरिका और ईरान के बीच तनाव इतना बढ़ गया कि हालात युद्ध जैसे बन गए। इसी तनाव को कम करने के लिए पाकिस्तान ने बीच में आकर सीजफायर यानी युद्ध विराम की बातचीत शुरू करवाई। इस मीटिंग में शामिल हैं अमेरिका के नेता जे.डी. वैंस, ईरान के टॉप अधिकारी और पाकिस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री शहबाज शरीफ। यहाँ करीब 10 बड़े मुद्दों पर चर्चा हो रही है, जैसे सीजफायर, ऑयल सप्लाई, न्यूक्लियर प्रोग्राम और प्रतिबंध हटाना। अब सबसे बड़ा ट्विस्ट, इजराइल इस मीटिंग से पूरी तरह बाहर है। क्यों? क्योंकि इजराइल इस सीजफायर से सहमत नहीं है और वह अभी भी लेबनान में हमले जारी रखे हुए है। दरअसल लेबनान में मौजूद हिजबुल्लाह, जो ईरान समर्थित ग्रुप है, उसे इजराइल अपने लिए बड़ा खतरा मानता है। इसी वजह से इजराइल का कहना है कि यह युद्ध अलग है और इसे अभी नहीं रोका जाएगा। अब सबसे बड़ा कंफ्यूजन यही है, ईरान चाहता है कि लेबनान भी सीजफायर में शामिल हो। अमेरिका इस बात से सहमत नहीं है। पाकिस्तान इसे शामिल करना चाहता है और इजराइल इसे पूरी तरह खारिज करता है। इसी कारण शांति की कोशिशें अभी अधूरी नजर आ रही हैं। तो कुल मिलाकर पाकिस्तान मीडिएटर की भूमिका निभा रहा है। अमेरिका और ईरान के बीच बातचीत जारी है, लेकिन इजराइल अभी भी आक्रामक रुख में है। यानी फिलहाल यह शांति पूरी तरह तय नहीं मानी जा सकती।
Like, a court in London ruled that calling an NHS nurse auntie is sexist, racist and humiliating. Be careful. Can using familiar terms like auntie, at work cross the line into harassment even if the intention is meant as respect. The Watford Employment Tribunal recently ruled in favour of Hilda Esteves, who was repeatedly called auntie by a colleague despite asking to be addressed by her first name. The tribunal concluded that the persistent use of this term created an offensive work environment and crossed into both age and sex harassment. Her colleague, Charles Apong, argued that auntie is culturally a term of respect. However, the court emphasized that the effect on Ms. Esteves mattered more than intent. Personal consent and workplace boundaries take precedence over cultural practices. The ruling awarded Ms. Esteves £1,425.15 in damages and clarified that even familiar or familial terms can be legally problematic if they make someone uncomfortable. This case highlights the importance of respecting individual preferences in professional settings and shows how microaggressions, even if unintended, can have real consequences. Employers worldwide, especially in diverse workplaces like the NHS, are reminded to prioritize professionalism and individual consent over cultural or habitual nicknames. It sets a precedent that workplace respect and clear communication are non-negotiable, regardless of intent. Like, Hungary is holding election. Allegations are that Russia and USA are influencing the election. Possible.
It's a European country that's home to fewer than 10 million people. And yet it's brought EU aid to Ukraine to a halt, and its upcoming election has prompted a visit from the US Vice President in support of its far-right government. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán faces a serious challenge in the election from one of his former supporters, and he could lose power for the first time since 2010. So why is Hungary's election being watched so closely, both inside and outside the country? The vote is drawing attention far beyond Hungary's villages though. Lining up alongside Prime Minister Orbán, far-right politicians from across Europe gave him their backing last month, including France's Marine Le Pen.
Viktor Orbán, qui se présente à nouveau devant les électeurs hongrois le 12 avril prochain, est un visionnaire et surtout un pionnier.
And it's not just European politicians who've given Orbán their support. Just 5 days before the vote, US Vice President J.D. Vance visited Budapest.
What has happened in this country, what has happened in the midst of this election campaign is one of the worst examples of foreign election interference that I've ever seen or ever even read about. I won't tell the people of Hungary how to vote. I would encourage the bureaucrats in Brussels to do the exact same thing.
Vance and US President Donald Trump himself have been highly critical of the EU on everything from trade to migration policy, aligning themselves with some of Orbán's key messaging on the campaign trail.
Like, many in China are hanging themselves from trees. It is spreading like an epidemic.
A 15-year-old named Hu Xinyu's body was found hanging from a tree. He went missing last October in southern China. People are questioning how the body was discovered less than 100 meters from the school he went missing. But no one in a massive search found him there before. And the strange thing is, all the school cameras lost their footage of the day he went missing. The police report is causing people to speculate why the boy died. Many say his organs were harvested and he was killed for his organs. Now authorities are blocking the site where the body was found, and they're told to conclude the case as is. Some online say the looks of the body is in perfect condition, which is impossible for it to not decay over the months since the boy went missing. Others reveal a bigger scheme. Students are being used as organ pools for CCP officials. Still, the question remains as to when the boy died and why the death seems so unnatural. What is there to hide? Subscribe.
Like, Telegram founder Pavel Durov said, WhatsApp encryption is the biggest fraud. Really? Meta needs to come clean.
You are watching Sanglikar's Weekly.
Lazy Bee, 11th April 2026.